Playing with Time, a journey through Vietnam's traditional games. Have you ever wondered how people connected before smartphones? How children played before video games? Get ready to travel across Vietnam and discover games that have united communities. For centuries. My name is Azalia, and today we're diving into a story that will teach you English while exploring Vietnam's rich cultural heritage. If you love learning English through captivating stories, hit that subscribe button and notification bell right now to join our growing community. Let's begin our adventure. Chapter 1. The Reluctant Visitor. The morning sun casts long shadows across Hanoi's busy streets as Alex stepped out of the airport taxi. At 25, with messy brown hair and tired eyes, he looked more like someone escaping something than a tourist. Eager to explore a new country, he adjusted his backpack, checked his phone, no signal yet, and sighed. "Is this really a good idea?" he muttered to himself. His company had sent him to Vietnam for a 6-month project, promising it would broaden his horizons and provide valuable international experience. But right now, all Alex felt was jet-lagged and overwhelmed. The air was thick with humidity. Scooters zoomed past in all directions, and signs in Vietnamese offered no comfort to his English-speaking brain. A small coffee shop beckoned from across the street, and Alex made his way there, narrowly avoiding a woman carrying baskets of fruit balanced on a pole across her shoulders. The coffee shop was cool and quiet. Alex ordered using hand gestures and a well-practiced smile. A few minutes later, he was sipping the strongest coffee he'd ever tasted. Sweet, rich, and intensely caffeinated. As he nursed his drink, a young woman at the next table looked up from her laptop. "First time in Vietnam?" she asked in perfect English. Alex nodded, surprised. "That obvious, huh?" She laughed, a warm, friendly sound. The wide eyes, the careful sipping of cha phay sua ja, the look of someone trying to figure out which way is north. "I've seen it before." She extended her hand. "I'm Mai, born here, studied in America, now working as a cultural tour guide. Alex, software engineer, here for 6 months, and already wondering if that's 5.5 months too many." Mai raised an eyebrow. "That's a shame. Vietnam has so much to offer, if you're willing to look past the initial culture shock." Alex shrugged. "I'm sure, but between the language barrier, the heat, and knowing absolutely no one here, I'm not exactly excited. What if I told you that I know the perfect way to understand Vietnam and make friends in the process?" Mai's eyes sparkled with something that looked suspiciously like mischief. "I'd say you're about to try and sell me an overpriced tour package." Mai laughed again. "Nothing so commercial. Actually, I'm heading to my grandmother's village this weekend for a special festival. It's about 2 hours from Hanoi. There will be food, music, and here's where it gets interesting. Traditional games." "Games?" Alex's interest perked up slightly. "Not video games," Mai clarified. "These are games people have played in Vietnam for hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. They're how communities connected, how children learned, how stories were passed down through generations. Like tag or hide and seek? Alex asked. Some are similar, but most are uniquely Vietnamese. Each game carries history, lessons, and a whole lot of fun. My grandmother always says, you can learn more about Vietnamese people by playing with them for an hour than by talking with them for a week. Alex hesitated. He had planned to spend his first weekend settling into his apartment and maybe exploring the immediate neighborhood. The thought of venturing into a rural village where even fewer people might speak English was intimidating. I don't know. Free food, authentic experiences, and I promised to translate everything Mai offered. Plus, my family would be honored to have an international guest. It's good luck, you know. Something about Mai's enthusiasm was contagious. Maybe it was the coffee hitting his system, or perhaps it was the realization that hiding in his apartment wouldn't make the next 6 months go any faster. Okay, he found himself saying, but if I embarrass myself completely, I'm blaming you. Mai grinned. Deal. Who knows? You might even enjoy yourself. As they exchanged phone numbers, Alex wondered what he was getting himself into. Little did he know that this impulsive decision would change how he saw Vietnam and himself forever. Chapter 2. The Village by the River. The weekend arrived quickly. Before Alex knew it, he was in Mai's small car, watching as Hanoi's towering buildings gave way to lush rice paddies and rolling hills. The countryside was a vibrant green that seemed almost unreal after years of living in urban environments. My grandmother's village is called Tan Hoa, Mai explained as she navigated the increasingly narrow roads. It sits beside the Red River and has been there for nearly 700 years. 700 years, Alex repeated, impressed despite himself. My hometown in America was founded in 1982. Mai laughed. Vietnam is an old country with a long memory. That's why these traditions and games have survived. They're part of who we are. As they approached the village, Alex spotted colorful flags and decorations lining the road. What's the festival for? It celebrates the harvest season. Farmers give thanks for a good crop and pray for prosperity in the coming year. It's also when many traditional games are played. She pointed ahead. Look, we're almost there. Than Hoa was nothing like Alex had imagined. Instead of the primitive collection of huts he'd embarrassingly expected, he found a charming village with a mix of traditional wooden houses and more modern structures. The streets were narrow but neat, and flowers bloomed everywhere. In the center of the village stood a communal house with an elegant curved roof and intricate carvings. Children ran through the streets, laughing and playing. Elderly people sat in doorways, watching the world go by with serene expressions. The smell of cooking food filled the air. It's beautiful, Alex admitted. Wait until you meet the people, Mai said, pulling up beside a 2-story house with bright blue shutters. This is my grandmother's place. No sooner had they stepped out of the car than a tiny woman with a face full of wrinkles and eyes full of life appeared at the door. "Ba oi!" Mai called, rushing to embrace her grandmother. The old woman hugged Mai tightly, then turned her gaze to Alex. He shifted uncomfortably under her scrutiny, but then her face broke into a wide smile, revealing surprisingly perfect teeth. "Welcome, American friend," she said in accented but clear English. "I am Balin. You stay in my house. You eat my food. You play our games." Alex bowed slightly, remembering this was a sign of respect. "Thank you for your hospitality, Mrs. Lin." "Not Mrs.," Mai whispered. "Ba means grandmother." "Ba Lin," Alex corrected himself, earning an approving nod. "Come, come," the old woman gestured. "Festival starts soon. You must eat first. Skinny boy needs strength for games." Alex found himself ushered into a cozy home, filled with the aroma of cooking food. The walls were adorned with family photographs spanning generations, interspersed with traditional Vietnamese paintings and calligraphy. Through an open door, he glimpsed a small altar with incense, fruit, and photographs. A family ancestor altar, he realized. Mai's extended family gradually appeared. Uncles, aunts, cousins of various ages, all greeting Mai warmly and regarding Alex with curious but friendly eyes. They spoke rapid Vietnamese, occasionally glancing his way with smiles. They're saying, "You're very tall," Mai translated with amusement. "And they're debating which games you'll be good at." "They might be disappointed," Alex admitted. "I wasn't exactly the athletic type in school." Ba Lin appeared with a tray of steaming food, fragrant, rice, grilled pork, fresh herbs, and dishes Alex couldn't identify, but that smelled delicious. "Eat," she commanded. "Then we play." As Alex took his first bite of the flavorful food, the distant sound of drums and music drifted through the open windows. Outside, the village was coming alive with festivities. Children ran past, dressed in bright colors. An old man carried what looked like a giant kite. "What exactly am I getting myself into?" Alex asked Mai, between bites. She smiled mysteriously. "A journey through time. These games have been played for generations. Some are simple, some complex, but all of them tell you something about Vietnam and its people." "I'm not sure I'm ready." "Nobody ever is," Mai said. "But that's part of the fun." Ba Lin watched their conversation with keen eyes, though she might not understand all the words. She seemed to read the hesitation in Alex's posture. "Young man," she said suddenly, drawing his attention, "you know why game's important?" Alex shook his head. "Because when we play, we forget to be afraid. We forget differences. We remember how to laugh." She tapped her chest. "Games speak language of heart. No translation needed." The simplicity and wisdom of her words struck Alex deeply. He straightened his shoulders and nodded. "I'm ready to learn," he said. Ba Lin grinned. "Good. First game very easy. Called O On Quan. You learn to count, to think, to be clever. She leaned forward. I warn you now, I never lose this game. And with that challenge issued, Alex's journey into Vietnam's traditional games began. Chapter 3. Counting Stones. Capturing Mandarins. After lunch, Balin led Alex and Mai to the communal house at the center of the village. The large open space was already filled with villagers of all ages. Some sat in groups playing various games, while others chatted and watched. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and laughter. This is where village gathers, Balin explained. For hundreds of years, same games, same joy. She guided them to a corner where several elders sat, cross-legged, around a wooden board carved with a series of depressions. Small stones filled most of these hollows, while two larger depressions each contained a single, slightly bigger stone. O An Quan, Balin announced proudly, oldest game in Vietnam. Some say 1,000 years old. What does the name mean? Alex asked. Mai translated. O means cell or square. An means to eat or capture. And Quan refers to a Mandarin official. So roughly, square that captures the Mandarin. Balin nodded approval at the translation. In old times, game teaches children about counting, strategy, and patience. Good for young brain. Now watch carefully. The old woman sat down opposite, another elderly man, who nodded respectfully at Alex. This is Mr. Tuan, village chess champion for 40 years. He will help demonstrate. Alex watched attentively as Mai explained the setup. The board has 10 small squares in a row, 5 on each side. Each small square contains 5 stones. The 2 larger squares at either end are called Quan squares. They're the Mandarins, Ba. Lin picked up a handful of stones from one of her squares and began distributing them, one by one, in a counterclockwise direction around the board. You take all stones from one of your squares, Mai narrated. Then you drop them one by one into each square, moving in this direction. When your last stone falls, you look at the next square. If it's empty, and the square after that contains stones, you capture all those stones. Alex watched, fascinated, as Balin made a series of moves, capturing stones with surprising speed and strategic foresight. Within minutes, she had accumulated a small pile of captured stones. The goal is to capture the most stones, including the valuable Quan stones, Mai concluded. It's like a combination of Mancala and chess. My turn to try, Alex asked. Balin reset the board efficiently, her fingers moving with practiced precision. Yes, you sit here. Alex took Mr. Tuan's place, crossing his legs awkwardly on the floor mat. The elderly spectators watched with unconcealed interest. Clearly, an American playing their traditional game was a novelty. Remember, Mai advised, think several moves ahead, like chess. Alex picked up the stones from one of his squares, feeling their smooth texture. They weren't ordinary pebbles, but seemed specially selected for their uniformity and pleasant feel. These stones are beautiful, he remarked. Ba Lin nodded. Same stones used by my grandmother and her grandmother before. Family treasure. Touched by this revelation, Alex began his move with careful deliberation. He dropped the stones one by one, watching where the last stone would land. His first attempt earned him no captures, drawing sympathetic clicks from the watching elders. Not bad for first try, Ba Lin encouraged. Watch now. She made another move, this time capturing 6 stones in one elegant sequence. The spectators nodded appreciatively. The game continued, with Alex gradually getting the hang of the basic strategy. Although Ba Lin was clearly going easy on him, he still lost by a considerable margin. You have potential, she declared, surprising him. Good eyes. Need practice. It's harder than it looks, Alex admitted. You have to count and plan simultaneously. Yes. Game teaches mathematics, strategy, forward thinking. Ba Lin gestured towards some children playing the same game nearby. Children learn numbers this way better than school. Alex watched the children playing and realized they were calculating complex sequences with ease. Valuable mathematical skills embedded in play. In old times, Mai added, Vietnam had many board games that taught important skills. O On Quan taught counting and strategy, especially useful for merchants and scholars. I can see why it survived so long, Alex said. It's genuinely engaging. A young boy of about 10 approached their group, eyeing Alex with a mixture of curiosity and challenge. He said something to Ba Lin, who laughed heartily. What did he say? Alex asked. Mai grinned. He wants to play against the foreigner. He says he'll go easy on you. Alex raised an eyebrow. Tell him I accept his challenge, but he shouldn't be too confident. The boy, introduced as Min, sat down with the serious expression of a chess grandmaster. As they began to play, Alex realized 2 things. First, that Min was far better at this game than he was. And second, that a crowd was gathering to watch. No pressure at all. The game proceeded with Min making lightning-fast decisions, while Alex carefully counted and recounted his options. Despite his best efforts, Min captured stone after stone with the ease of long practice. He plays every day after school. Mai whispered. When Min executed the village children compete regularly, capturing one of the precious Quan stones. Appreciative murmurs rippled through the crowd. The boy remained stone-faced, but his eyes twinkled with satisfaction. I think I'm outmatched, Alex admitted. With good humor, Min suddenly spoke up in careful English. You play good. For beginner. The crowd erupted in laughter, and Alex couldn't help joining in. Thank you for the lesson, teacher, he replied with an exaggerated bow. The boy finally broke into a smile. Tomorrow I teach more. You practice. As the crowd dispersed, and Min ran off to join his friends, Alex turned to Mai. I just got schooled by a 10-year-old. Consider it your first real lesson in Vietnamese culture, she replied. Age doesn't matter as much as skill, and games are taken seriously. but always end in friendship. Barlin patted Alex's shoulder. Now you understand first game. Come, festival has more to show. Many games waiting. As they walked away from the O Un Quan boards, Alex realized something surprising. He was having fun. More than that, he felt a connection to this place and these people that transcended language and cultural differences. Through the simple act of playing a game, he'd experienced something authentic and meaningful. "What's next?" he asked, with genuine enthusiasm. "Something that will test your strength, not just your mind," Mai replied with a mischievous smile. "Hope you're ready to pull your weight, literally." Chapter 4. The Strength of Many. The village square was being transformed as Alex, Mai, and Ba Lin made their way through the growing crowd. Men were uncoiling an enormous rope, thicker than Alex's arm and at least 20 meters long. Each end was decorated with colorful ribbons and bells. "Kyoko," Ba Lin announced. "Tug of war, but not like American version." "How is it different?" Alex asked, watching as people began to gather around the rope. "Vietnamese tug of war is, how you say, sacred," Ba Lin explained. "Not just game of strength, game of community, harmony, and," she searched for the word, "balance," Mai supplied. "It's part of harvest festivals throughout Vietnam." The two sides represent different forces in nature that must be balanced for a good harvest. A village elder stepped forward and raised his hands for silence. He spoke at length in Vietnamese, his voice carrying authority and reverence. "He's explaining the significance of the game," Mai translated quietly. "The two teams represent heaven and earth, male and female energy, sun and rain, all forces that must be in harmony for crops to grow. The rope itself is sacred, made from special materials." Alex noticed that people were listening with respect, some nodding solemnly. This wasn't just a casual game. It clearly held deep cultural significance. When the elder finished speaking, people began forming two lines on either side of the rope. To Alex's surprise, the division wasn't random. Men and women mixed on both sides, but there seemed to be an intentional balancing of ages and sizes. "They're making sure the teams are fair," Mai explained. "It's important that the struggle be genuine and balanced." Ba Lin suddenly pushed Alex forward. "You join. Strong young man, good addition." "Me? But I don't know." "No need to know. Just pull when others pull," Ba Lin said simply. Before Alex could protest further, he found himself guided to one side of the rope. A middle-aged man with weathered hands and a friendly smile nodded at him, showing him where to stand and how to grip the thick rope. Legs apart, rope under right arm, left hand over right, Mai called from the sidelines. "And whatever you do, don't let go," the village elder, who had spoken earlier, now placed a red cloth in the middle of the rope, directly above a line drawn in the dirt. He raised a wooden clapper and struck it 3 times. On the 3rd strike, both sides began to pull. Alex was immediately struck by the immense force transmitted through the rope. This wasn't like the casual tug-of-war games he remembered from school picnics. Every person on both sides was pulling with serious effort, their faces tensed with concentration. "Pull together," someone shouted in English from his team. "Follow the rhythm." Alex realized his team was pulling in coordinated bursts, not constant strain. He quickly adjusted, synchronizing his efforts with theirs. The rope vibrated with tension, hardly moving in either direction. The crowd cheered and sang, creating a hypnotic soundtrack to the contest. Alex felt sweat breaking out on his forehead as he strained against the rope. His hands, uncalloused and unused to such work, began to burn. "Don't give up," Mai shouted encouragingly. 3 minutes in, and neither side had gained significant advantage. The red marker cloth had barely moved from the center line. Alex's muscles screamed in protest, but looking at the determined faces of his teammates, some elderly, some as young as 15, he found renewed resolve. His team leader began a rhythmic chant, and everyone pulled in sync with the cadence. Suddenly, they gained a few centimeters. The crowd roared. The opposing team responded with their own coordinated effort, pulling the marker back to center. The contest continued, each side gaining and losing ground in small increments. 7 minutes in, Alex's hands were raw, and his back ached. But he'd found a second wind. The collective effort was unlike anything he'd experienced before. A perfect synchronization of individual strengths into one unified force. 10 minutes after they began, the elder struck his clapper again, signaling the end of the round. Both sides relaxed, many participants dropping to sit on the ground, breathing heavily. Alex flexed his burning hands, noticing the red marks where the rope had dug into his skin. "You strong," exclaimed his team leader, clapping him on the shoulder. "Good pulling." "Thanks," Alex gasped, still catching his breath. "But I think I'll have blisters tomorrow." "Badge of honor," the man replied with a grin. Mai approached with a cup of water, which Alex gratefully accepted. "Who won?" he asked between gulps. "Nobody. First round always ends in a draw," she explained. "It represents the ideal balance of forces in nature." "You're kidding. All that effort for a planned tie." Mai smiled. "The journey matters more than the destination. This first round brings everyone together, reminds them that they're connected." Barlin joined them, looking pleased. "You pull good, not afraid of hard work." "I thought my arms would fall off," Alex admitted. "Second round starts soon." "Bah," Lin warned. "This time, one side must win." "There's more." Alex looked at his raw hands. A young girl appeared with a small pot of ointment. She gestured for Alex to hold out his hands, then carefully applied the cooling substance to his rope burns. "Traditional remedy," Mai explained. special herbs that numb pain and prevent blisters. As the girl worked, Alex noticed the rope was being repositioned. This time, however, people were lining up differently. Now villagers compete, Balin explained. Our village against neighboring village. Sure enough, a group of newcomers had arrived, greeted with friendly jibes and competitive gestures from the locals. These visitors wore different colored headbands and approached the rope with theatrical displays of strength. Every year we compete against Duke Thang Village, Mai said. The winning village is said to have better harvests in the coming season, so now it matters who wins. Very much so. The villagers take this competition seriously. Some families have participated for generations. The village elder positioned himself beside the rope once more, but this time he was joined by another elder, presumably from the visiting village. Together, they inspected the rope, the marker, and the ground line, before nodding in satisfaction. You join again? Balin asked Alex. Despite his aching hands, Alex found himself nodding. The experience had been intense, but exhilarating. More than that, he felt a connection with his teammates. A wordless bond formed through shared effort. I'm in, he confirmed. This time, Alex was positioned closer to the middle of the line. A woman in her 60s stood in front of him, while a teenage boy stood behind. Together, they gripped the rope, their hands overlapping. Remember rhythm, his team leader called. Pull like river flows, constant, steady, together. The elders struck their clappers simultaneously, and the contest began again. This round was different. From the first moment, both sides pulled with maximum effort, seeking early advantage. The visitors employed a different strategy, pulling in quick, sharp jerks, rather than the steady rhythm of Alex's team. The marker moved inch by inch toward the visitors' side. Alex's team leader shouted commands. Adjusting their strategy, they dug their heels into specially prepared grooves in the ground and pulled with renewed coordination. The rope trembled and creaked under the strain. Sweat poured down Alex's face as he put every ounce of strength into the effort. He was no longer thinking about his hands or his aching muscles. He was fully present in this moment, this collective struggle. Slowly, their coordinated pulling began to yield results. The marker moved back to center, then gradually toward their side. The local spectators erupted in encouraging shouts. Hold steady, the team leader commanded. They will try one big pull. Sure enough, the visitors gathered themselves for a massive collective heave. Alex felt the rope surge, nearly pulling him off balance. For a moment, it seemed they would lose their advantage. But the elderly woman in front of Alex shouted something that needed no translation. A cry of determination and defiance. The entire team responded, digging deeper, with a final unified pull that seemed to come from the earth itself. They dragged the marker past the victory line on their side. The crowd erupted in cheers. The visiting team collapsed in good-natured defeat, laughing and shaking their heads. Alex found himself enveloped in a group hug, with teammates pounding his back and shouting congratulations in Vietnamese. Despite the language barrier, the message was clear. He had become one of them in this moment of triumph. The village elder approached with a ceremonial cup of rice wine, offering it first to the eldest member of their team, then passing it around. When it reached Alex, he took a small sip of the potent liquid, earning approving nods. "Now you understand, Kyoko," Barlin said proudly. "Not just pulling rope, pulling together, being part of something bigger than yourself." As the celebrations continued around them, Mai leaned in. "How do you feel?" Alex flexed his rope-burned hands and rolled his aching shoulders. But then he smiled, a genuine, uninhibited smile that reached his eyes. "Connected," he said simply. "I feel connected." Barlin nodded sagely. Second lesson of Vietnamese games. Alone, we are weak. Together, we are strong. As Alex watched the two villages now mingling, sharing food and drink, despite the fierce competition minutes earlier, he understood something profound about Vietnamese culture. Competition here wasn't about individual glory, but collective identity. Winning mattered, but community mattered more. The visiting village leader approached and, through Mai's translation, congratulated Alex on his contribution to the victory. He then extended an invitation for Alex to visit their village festival the following month. "You see," Barlin said, beaming, "games build bridges between people, better than any language." As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the village square, Alex realized he'd completely forgotten about his phone, his work emails, and his initial reservations about being in Vietnam. For the first time since arriving, he felt truly at present and genuinely happy to be exactly where he was. "What game comes next?" he asked eagerly. Mai exchanged a glance with her grandmother. "Something that will really lift your spirits," she said with a mysterious smile. "But first, we feast. No good games on an empty stomach." Chapter 5. Swinging into Tradition. The evening feast was a community affair, with long tables set up in the village square. Families brought dishes to share, steaming pots of pho, crispy spring rolls, grilled meats, and colorful salads. Alex found himself seated between Barlin and a local school teacher who spoke enough English to maintain a simple conversation. As they ate under strings of lanterns, musicians played traditional instruments, creating a soundtrack that was both melancholic and joyful. Alex noticed children's excitement building as they finished their meals. Clearly, more festivities awaited. "What happens next?" he asked Mai, as she passed him a plate of sweet rice cakes. "One of my favorite games," she replied. "John Ju, the Vietnamese swing. Swinging, like playground swings." Ba Lin chuckled. "Not like child's play. This is ancient tradition, test of courage, skill, and," she gestured toward the sky, getting closer to heavens. After dinner, the crowd migrated toward an open field on the edge of the village. In the center stood 2 tall bamboo poles, at least 15 feet high, crossed near the top and securely bound together. From this crossbeam hung 4 long ropes with colorful cloth seats at the ends. "Those don't look like any swings I've seen before," Alex commented, noting the unusual height and construction. "Jeonju dates back thousands of years," Mai explained. "Like many Vietnamese games, it's tied to agricultural beliefs. The higher you swing, the better the harvest will be. It's traditionally played during Tet, Vietnamese New Year, and spring festivals." Village men were making final adjustments to the structure, testing its sturdiness. From the animated discussions, Alex gathered that safety was being taken seriously. "Who gets to swing?" he asked, watching as people began gathering around. "Traditionally, young unmarried men and women," Mai said. "It was actually a courtship ritual. Young women would showcase their grace, while men demonstrated strength and bravery. And now anyone can participate, though it still takes skill. Usually 2 people swing together, creating balance and harmony." Ba Lin nudged Alex. "You try." Alex looked up at the towering structure. "I don't think..." "Scared?" Ba Lin's eyes twinkled mischievously. Before Alex could respond, drummers began a rhythmic beat, signaling the start of the event. 4 young people stepped forward, 2 men and 2 women, and approached the swings. Mai explained the process. Each swing has 2 ropes. The swingers stand facing each other, gripping the ropes, and push off the ground with their feet. As one person pushes down, the other rises up. It requires perfect coordination. Alex watched, fascinated, as the first pair positioned themselves. The young woman wore a traditional ao dai in vibrant green, while the man wore a simple white shirt and black pants. They took positions opposite each other, grasping the ropes firmly. At a signal from the drummer, they began. Using their legs to push against the ground, they created a swinging motion that quickly gained momentum. Higher and higher they swung, their bodies moving in perfect counterbalance. When the woman descended, the man rose, and vice versa. The crowd cheered as they reached impressive heights, the swing arcing through the air in wide, graceful pendulum movements. Alex held his breath, concerned for their safety, but the swingers showed no fear, only exhilaration and focus. "They make it look easy," he remarked. "Years of practice," Mai replied. "Many start learning as children with smaller swings." After several minutes, the first pair gradually slowed their momentum until they could safely step off. The crowd applauded enthusiastically. The second pair took their turn, demonstrating equal skill but a different style. Their movements more daring, reaching even higher arcs that drew gasps from the spectators. "Now," Ba Lin declared, grabbing Alex's arm. "Your turn." "Me? No, I couldn't possibly." "You need partner," Ba Lin continued, ignoring his protests. She scanned the crowd and called out something in Vietnamese. To Alex's surprise, a young woman stepped forward, smiling shyly. "This is my cousin Hien," Mai introduced them. "She's an excellent John Jew swinger and has agreed to be your partner." Hien bowed slightly. "I make sure you not fall," she said. In careful English, Alex looked from the intimidating swing structure to Hien's confident face, then back to Ba Lin's expectant expression. He realized that refusing would disappoint not just his hosts, but the gathered villagers who were watching with interest. "Just the basics," he stipulated. "No reaching for the stars on my first try." Mai translated this to the crowd, generating appreciative laughter. The village elder, who oversaw the rope safety, approached, inspecting the swing carefully before giving a thumbs up. He guided Alex to the swing and demonstrated how to hold the ropes, one in each hand, with a firm but not rigid grip. She positioned herself opposite him, their toes nearly touching. "Follow my movements," she instructed. "When I push down, you rise up. When you feel yourself coming down, push with your feet." The drummer began a gentle rhythm, slower than before, appropriate for beginners. Hien nodded encouragingly. "Ready? Now!" She pushed lightly against the ground, initiating the swing's movement. Alex felt himself rise slightly, then descend. On his downward motion, he pushed against the earth as instructed, sending Hien upward. Their first few exchanges were awkward, with inconsistent timing that produced jerky movements. The crowd offered encouraging shouts, and Ba Lin called out advice that Mai translated. "Bend knees more. Feel rhythm in body." Gradually, Alex began to sync with Hien's movements. The sensation was unlike anything he'd experienced. A combination of flying and falling, freedom and coordination. As their movements harmonized, the swing rose higher. "Good!" Hien called, her face alight with pleasure. "Now we go higher." She pushed more forcefully on her next downward arc, sending Alex soaring. For a brief, terrifying moment, he felt suspended in midair. The village spread out below him. Then gravity reclaimed him, and he descended, remembering just in time to push with his legs to continue the momentum. The crowd clapped in rhythm with their swinging, creating a hypnotic soundtrack to this airborne dance. Alex found himself grinning uncontrollably as they swung higher and higher. The fear had transformed into exhilaration. "How high can we go?" he shouted to Hien. "As high as we trust each other," she called back. That answer struck Alex as profoundly meaningful. This wasn't just about physical coordination, but about human connection. Trusting a stranger with your safety. Working together toward a common goal. For several wonderful minutes, they continued their aerial partnership, reaching impressive heights that drew appreciative noises from the onlookers. Finally, Hien signaled that they should slow down, and they gradually reduced their momentum until they could step safely onto solid ground. Alex's legs trembled slightly as he readjusted to stillness. but his face was flushed with accomplishment. The villagers applauded enthusiastically, several approaching to pat his back in congratulation. Very good for first time, Barlin declared proudly, as if his success reflected well on her judgment. He bowed slightly to Alex. You have natural talent, she said, her eyes bright with the shared experience. I had an excellent teacher, Alex replied, returning the bow. As they moved away from the swings to allow the next pair their turn, Mai handed Alex a cup of warm tea. So, what did you think of Jeonju? Alex sipped the tea, considering his answer. It's like a perfect metaphor. Two people who might be complete strangers, having to trust each other immediately, finding rhythm together, and achieving something neither could do alone. Barlin nodded approvingly. You understand third lesson of Vietnamese. Games. Balance is everything. In swing, in life, in community. The evening continued, with more villagers taking turns on the swings. Some reached astonishing heights that made Alex's attempt seem modest by comparison. One elderly couple, who Mai explained had been swinging together for 50 years, moved with such perfect synchronization that they appeared to be a single entity in motion. They swing together every festival, Mai explained. They say it keeps their marriage strong, reminding them that life has ups and downs, but they face them together. As darkness fell completely, lanterns illuminated the swinging area, creating an almost magical atmosphere. The final pair of the evening was a father and his young daughter, swinging gently as he taught her the basics. The crowd watched with tender expressions, witnessing the passing of tradition to the next generation. Alex found himself deeply moved by the entire experience. I never expected something as simple as a swing to contain so much meaning, he admitted. That's the beauty of traditional games, Mai replied. They're never just games. They're lessons, stories, and connections disguised as play. As they walked back toward the village center, the sounds of music and laughter grew louder. The festival was entering its evening phase, with dancing and storytelling scheduled until late. We have more games tomorrow, Barlin announced. Tonight, we celebrate with music and stories. What's on the agenda for tomorrow? Alex asked, surprised by his own enthusiasm. Games that test different skills, Mai said. Precision, teamwork, quick thinking. But now, rest your muscles. Jeonju works body parts you didn't know you had. As if on cue, Alex felt a pleasant ache spreading through his shoulders and core. I think I'm going to feel this in the morning, he admitted. Good pain, Barlin declared. Means you lived fully today. As they rejoined the village celebration, Alex realized that in just one day, he had experienced more genuine connection and joy than in months of his regular life. Through these games, these simple, ancient pastimes, he had glimpsed something profound about Vietnamese culture and, perhaps more surprisingly, about himself. The evening ended with village elders telling stories around a central fire, tales of ancient heroes, clever animals, and the origins of the games they had played, though Alex couldn't understand the words. Mai translated key points, and he found himself captivated by the animated expressions and the reverential attention of the audience. That night, sleeping on a simple mat in Ba Lin's home, Alex dreamed of swinging high above green rice fields, perfectly balanced between earth and sky. Chapter 6. Blindfolded Insights. Alex awoke to the sounds of roosters crowing and the delicious aroma of fresh banh mi bread. Sunlight streamed through the bamboo curtains, creating patterns across the wooden floor. For a moment, he was disoriented. Where was his apartment, his alarm clock, his phone? Then the memories of yesterday flooded back. The village, the games, the connections he'd made. His body ached pleasantly from the tug of war and swinging, reminding him that yesterday had been real, not just a vivid dream. He found Mai and Ba Lin in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. A small feast awaited: steaming rice porridge, fresh fruit, and banh mi filled with savory ingredients. "Good morning, sleepy American," Ba Lin greeted him. "You sleep like stone after games." Alex smiled sheepishly. "I guess I was more tired." Then I realized, all that pulling and swinging really takes it out of you. "Eat well," Mai advised. "Today's games require different energy, less strength, more awareness." As they ate breakfast, the sounds of the continuing festival drifted through the open windows. Children's laughter, music, and the general bustle of a village, alive with celebration, created a cheerful backdrop to their meal. "What exactly are we playing today?" Alex asked, between bites of the delicious porridge. Mai and Ba Lin exchanged mysterious smiles. "Games that open eyes by closing them," Ba Lin replied cryptically. After breakfast, they made their way back to the village square, which had been transformed again. Now a large circle was drawn in the dirt, with villagers gathering around its perimeter. In the center stood a clay pot, suspended from a tripod made of bamboo poles. "Jap knew," Mai explained. "The pot-breaking game. Looks simple enough," Alex commented. "You just hit the pot with a stick." Ba Lin chuckled, with eyes covered. "Not so simple then." As Alex watched, a young man stepped forward. Volunteers tied a cloth around his eyes and handed him a long bamboo stick. They then spun him around several times until he appeared completely disoriented. The crowd fell silent as the blindfolded man cautiously began moving toward where he thought the pot might be. People called out encouragement and directions in Vietnamese, some helpful, some deliberately misleading. The man adjusted his course based on the cacophony of voices, taking tentative swings with his stick. After several near misses that drew collective gasps from the audience, he finally made contact. The clay pot shattered, revealing candies and small prizes that scattered across the ground. Children rushed forward to collect the treats, shrieking with delight. "So it's like a piñata, but stationary and with audience participation." Alex observed. Yes, but with deeper meaning, Mai replied. It represents breaking away bad luck and negative energy from the previous year. The blindfold symbolizes how we must sometimes trust our instincts when we cannot see the way clearly. Village children were now lining up excitedly for their turns. Each was blindfolded, spun, and set loose to find the pot, which was replaced after each successful break. Some found their target quickly, while others wandered comically off course, drawing good-natured laughter. Would you like to try? Mai asked Alex. Before he could answer, several children spotted him and began chanting something in Vietnamese, pointing excitedly. What are they saying? Alex asked. They want to see the American break the pot. Mai translated, her eyes twinkling. They're betting you'll go in the complete wrong direction. Never one to back down from a challenge, especially when issued by children. Alex stepped forward. Tell them I accept their challenge. The children cheered as a village elder approached with a blindfold. The cloth was secured tightly around Alex's eyes, plunging him into darkness. Hands gripped his shoulders and spun him around, more times than seemed necessary, he thought wryly. When the spinning stopped, Alex stood still for a moment, trying to regain his equilibrium and recall where the pot had been positioned. The silence of the crowd was unnerving. He had expected guidance like the others had received. Hello, he called out. A little help here. Suddenly, voices erupted from all directions, calling out in Vietnamese. Alex couldn't understand the words, but he could sense some were directing him left, others right. Some voices seemed closer to the ground, the children, while others came from adult height. Which way? He called out, taking a tentative step forward. The volume increased, creating a disorienting chorus of contradictory guidance. Alex realized this was part of the challenge, filtering through the noise to find useful direction. He decided to focus on Ba Lin's voice, which he could distinguish among the others. Moving slowly in the direction she seemed to be calling from, he extended the stick cautiously. The crowd's reactions told him when he was getting warmer or colder. Excited shouts indicated he was approaching the target. Groans suggested he was veering off course. After what felt like an eternity of shuffling and swinging, his stick made contact with something solid. The distinctive sound of cracking clay was followed by cheers and applause. Alex removed his blindfold to see fragments of the pot scattered around his feet, along with candies and small tokens. Children swarmed around him, collecting treats and looking at him with new respect. Ba Lin approached, beaming with approval. You listen well, she said. Many voices, but you find true guidance. I followed your voice, Alex admitted. It seemed the most trustworthy. Ba Lin nodded sagely. In life, many voices tell you which way to go. Wisdom is knowing which to follow. Alex hadn't expected a philosophical lesson from breaking a clay pot, but he was beginning to understand that in Vietnam, games were never just games. After the pot-breaking activity concluded, the crowd migrated to another area, where a new game was being set up. This time, a large open space had been cleared, with straw gates positioned at various intervals. Bitmat Bat Day, Mai announced. Blindfolded goat catching. Let me guess. More blindfolds? Alex asked. Vietnamese games teach that sometimes we must navigate without seeing, Mai replied. It builds other senses, other ways of knowing. The game setup was explained. One player would be blindfolded to play the catcher, while several others would play goats. The goats would make bleating sounds as they moved around, and the catcher had to tag them. The catch? The playing field had obstacles that both catcher and goats had to navigate. Traditionally, real goats were used, Mai explained, but now we use human goats, much less messy. A teenage girl volunteered to be the first catcher. After being blindfolded, she stood in the center as 5 goats positioned themselves around the field. At a signal from the elder, the goats began making convincing bar sounds while moving carefully through the obstacle course. The blindfolded girl turned her head from side to side, tracking the sounds with remarkable precision. She moved cautiously, but deliberately toward one particularly loud goat, hands outstretched. After a brief chase that had the audience laughing and cheering, she managed to tag one of the players. Ending the round, several more rounds followed, with different catches and goats. Some were comically unsuccessful, while others showed impressive skill in using their hearing to navigate. Your turn now, Barlin announced, pushing Alex forward. I'm starting to think you enjoy watching me stumble around blindfolded. Alex joked. Best way to see person's true character, she replied with a mysterious smile. As the blindfold was secured around his eyes once more, Alex tried to memorize the layout of the obstacles. Soon, the distinctive sounds of human goats filled his ears, some distant, some tantalizingly close. Moving carefully, Alex focused on a bar that seemed nearby and consistent. He shuffled forward, hands extended, feeling his way around obstacles he couldn't see. The ground texture changed beneath his feet, from packed dirt to grass to sand, providing subtle clues about his location. The sound shifted constantly as the goats moved around him. One seemed to be circling closer, its bleating becoming more distinct. Alex pivoted and lunged, only to grab empty air as the nimble goat dodged away, drawing laughter from the crowd. Determined now, Alex stood still and simply listened. He filtered out the audience noise, the distant music, focusing solely on the goat sounds. One goat seemed less cautious than the others, its movements more predictable. Alex moved deliberately toward this sound, careful to avoid obstacles he sensed rather than saw. His hand brushed against fabric, and he quickly grabbed, catching a surprised goat who bleated in defeat. Removing his blindfold, Alex found he had captured Min, the boy who had defeated him at O An Quan the day before. The boy grinned up at him. You catch good, Min said in his careful English. But I let you win. Of course you did, Alex replied with a mock bow. Very generous of you. As they moved away from the game area, Mai handed Alex a cup of cool water. You're getting better at these games, she observed, finding your way without seeing. It's strange, Alex admitted. When you can't use your eyes, everything else becomes sharper. Sounds, smells, intuition. I feel more present. That's exactly the point, Mai said. These games teach awareness beyond the obvious. In Vietnamese culture, we believe true understanding comes from all senses, not just sight. Ba Lin joined them, carrying a basket of local fruits. You learn fourth lesson of Vietnamese games. Sometimes we see better with eyes closed. As they shared the fruit, Alex reflected on his experiences. In the 2 days he'd spent in this village, he'd learned more about Vietnamese culture and himself than he could have from any guidebook or tourist attraction. What happens when the festival ends tomorrow? He asked, suddenly realizing he didn't want to leave. Life returns to normal, Mai replied. People go back to work in the fields, children to school, and me, back to Hanoi, back to my computer and air conditioning. Ba Lin studied him with keen eyes. You different now. Cannot go back same person. The truth of her words resonated within him. Something had shifted during these games. A perspective, an opening, a connection he hadn't expected. There is one more day of games, Mai reminded him, and the most important ones are yet to come. What could be more important than what we've already played? Alex wondered. Mai smiled mysteriously. Games that bring people together, not just through competition, but through creation. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the village, Alex found himself hoping that his final day in Than Hoa would somehow stretch into eternity. Chapter 7. The Art of Connection. The festival's final day dawned with a special energy in the air. Villagers moved with purpose, setting up elaborate game stations throughout the community spaces. Colorful fabrics, bamboo poles, and various crafting materials appeared in designated areas. Alex had slept deeply again, his body and mind exhausted but invigorated by the previous day's activities. When he emerged for breakfast, Ba Lin presented him with a simple outfit of traditional Vietnamese clothing, loose black pants, and a comfortable brown ao dai tunic. Today, you not just watch games. You become part of festival memory, she declared, gesturing for him to try on the clothing. The garments fit surprisingly well, and when Alex looked at his reflection in Ba Lin's small mirror, he barely recognized himself. The traditional clothing seemed to transform him. Or perhaps the transformation had already begun, and the clothing merely reflected it. You look like you belong here, Mai commented, entering with a tray of breakfast items. I'm starting to feel like I do, Alex replied, surprising himself with how true the words felt. After breakfast, they joined the growing crowd in the village center. Today's atmosphere felt different, less competitive and more collaborative. People worked together in groups, setting up materials and discussing plans in animated Vietnamese. Today's games focus on creativity and connection. Mai explained. They're less about winning and more about making something beautiful together. The first activity was already underway. Groups of villagers, particularly children and elders, sat together making colorful objects with paper, bamboo, and string. Tha Dieu. Kite making and flying, Mai said, one of Vietnam's oldest pastimes. Alex watched as experienced hands helped younger ones fold paper, bend bamboo into frames, and attach the two with careful precision. The kites took various shapes, some traditional diamonds, others elaborate dragons, butterflies, and birds. In agricultural communities, kite flying was believed to bring good weather for crops, Mai explained. But it's also a way for generations to connect. Grandparents teach grandchildren the techniques passed down through centuries. Can anyone join? Alex asked, eyeing a particularly friendly-looking group where Min was working alongside an elderly man. Of course. In fact, I think they're expecting you, Mai replied, nodding toward Min, who had spotted them and was waving energetically. Joining Min's group, Alex was immediately handed a thin strip of bamboo and shown how to bend it into a curved shape without breaking. The elderly man, who Mai introduced as Master Tuan, had been making kites for over 60 years. He says your hands are strong, but need gentleness for kite work. Mai translated, as Master Tuan demonstrated the proper technique. Under the patient guidance of Min and Master Tuan, Alex learned to create a simple diamond kite. The process was meditative, measuring, bending, tying, and finally covering the frame with colorful paper. Each step required focus and precision. Not too tight, not too loose, Master Tuan advised through Mai's translation. Like many things in life, as Alex worked, he noticed other groups creating far more elaborate kites, multi-tiered creations, with tails that would trail dramatically in the sky. But there was no competition, only sharing of techniques and materials. When Alex's kite was complete, a simple but sturdy diamond with red and yellow paper, Min nodded with approval. Good for first time, he declared. Now we make it fly. The entire village moved to an open field for the kite flying. The day had provided perfect conditions, clear skies and a steady breeze. One by one, kites took to the air, their handlers running to catch the wind, before handing the strings to partners who maintain the altitude with careful tugs and releases. Master Tuan showed Alex how to launch his creation, emphasizing the importance of timing and feeling the wind. After 2 failed attempts where the kite nosedived dramatically, Alex finally caught a gust that lifted his diamond skyward. The sensation was unexpectedly emotional, watching something he had created with his own hands soar against the blue sky. Around him, the air filled with kites of all shapes and sizes, creating a colorful tapestry overhead. Children shrieked with delight. Elders nodded with satisfaction, and everyone's faces turned upward in shared appreciation. In old times, Ba Lin explained, appearing beside him, we believed kites carried wishes to heavens. What is your wish, Alex? Looking around at the village, the people who had welcomed him so warmly, the new skills and insights he had gained, Alex found his wish forming easily. To remember this feeling, he said quietly. To not lose this connection when I go back to my regular life. Ba Lin nodded approvingly. Good wish. Kite will carry it high. As the morning progressed into afternoon, the kites remained overhead, tended by designated flyers who took turns. Meanwhile, a new activity was being organized near the communal house. Nem Kon, throwing the sacred ball, Mai announced. This game is especially important in ethnic minority communities. In Vietnam's northern highlands, Alex watched as villagers constructed a simple target, a ring decorated with colorful ribbons, mounted atop a tall bamboo pole. Meanwhile, others were creating small, colorful fabric balls filled with rice or beans, each attached to a long streaming tail of colorful cloth strips. The con ball represents fertility and abundance, Mai explained. The game is traditionally played between unmarried men and women as a form of courtship. Men and women stand in separate circles and throw the ball through the target to each other. So it's about precision and skill? Alex asked. Yes, but also about connection. The ball carries messages between throwers. If you catch someone's ball, it suggests a special bond. The villagers arrange themselves in 2 circles, not strictly divided by gender, as in traditional times, but mixed to ensure everyone could participate. Alex found himself standing next to Ba Lin, who held several colorful con balls. You throw to someone you wish to connect with, she explained, handing him a red and gold ball. I choose wisely. Alex looked around the circle. Many faces had become familiar over the past days. Min, Master Tuan, Hien from the swings, and others whose names he couldn't recall, but whose smiles he recognized. When the game began, con balls flew through the air in graceful arcs. Some passed cleanly through the elevated ring, drawing cheers. Others missed, resulting in good-natured laughter. The colorful tails streamed behind each throw, creating fleeting rainbows against the sky. Ba Lin demonstrated a perfect throw, her tiny frame belying impressive accuracy. Her con sailed through the center of the ring and was caught by an elderly man across the circle, who bowed respectfully in acknowledgement. Old friends, Mai explained with a smile. They've been throwing con to each other at festivals for over 60 years. When Alex's turn came, he carefully aimed his con, focusing on the target ring. His first throw fell short, the colorful ball dropping to the ground. His second attempt went wide. By his third try, he had better calibrated the weight and distance, sending the con cleanly through the ring. To his surprise, Mai caught his throw, the colorful streamers wrapping momentarily around her wrist, as if by design. Good throw, she called across the circle. The con chose well. As the afternoon continued, Alex found himself fully immersed in the rhythm of the game, throwing, catching, connecting with various members of the community through the simple act of exchanging these symbolic objects. In Vietnamese culture, Mai explained during a break, games like Nem Con are about more than skill. They're about weaving community bonds, creating shared experiences that connect people across boundaries. The final activity of the day began as the sun started its descent. Villagers gathered in a large open area, forming a human circle with children at the front for better viewing. Mua Roi Nuoc, water puppetry, Mai explained. One of Vietnam's most unique art forms. A portable pool had been set up, about 20 feet square and 3 feet deep, filled with water that reflected the late afternoon light. Behind it, partially concealed by a bamboo screen, puppeteers prepared their characters. Water puppetry began in the rice fields of the Red River Delta. Mai narrated as they found seats. During floods, farmers would entertain each other with puppet shows performed on the water's surface. The water serves as both stage and special effect. Music began. Traditional Vietnamese instruments creating a haunting melody. Then, as if by magic, puppets emerged from beneath the water's surface. Farmers, water buffalo, dragons, and phoenixes, all dancing across the water. Alex watched in amazement as the puppets performed impossible feats, diving beneath the surface, only to reappear elsewhere, spraying water in graceful arcs, and even appearing to walk on water. Behind the screen, skilled puppeteers stood waist-deep in the pool, manipulating long underwater poles with invisible techniques. The puppeteers trained for years to master this art. Mai whispered, each character requires different movements, different skills. The performance told stories familiar to every Vietnamese child, tales of village life, mythical creatures, and ancient legends. Though Alex couldn't understand the narration, the visual storytelling transcended language barriers. The show neared its conclusion. Something unexpected happened. A new puppet appeared, clearly crafted recently, as its paint looked fresh. To Alex's astonishment, it was a Western man figure, wearing traditional Vietnamese clothing, attempting to fly a kite and play village games. The crowd erupted in delighted laughter and turned to look at Alex, who realized with a mixture of embarrassment and pleasure that the puppet was meant to represent him. The puppet Alex participated in water versions of the games he had played over the festival, fumbling at first but gradually succeeding with help from village puppet friends. The performance ended with puppet Alex joining hands with puppet villagers in a circle of harmony. When the puppeteers finally emerged from behind the screen, soaking wet but smiling broadly, the audience applauded thunderously. The lead puppeteer approached Alex, presenting him with the puppet crafted in his likeness. "They made this today," Mai translated. So you will always remember that you are part of our village story now. Alex accepted the puppet with genuine emotion, touched by the gesture and its meaning. The craftsmanship was exquisite, capturing his features with friendly accuracy and dressing him in the same traditional clothing he now wore. As darkness fell, lanterns were lit throughout the village. The final evening of the festival would culminate in a communal meal and music, a farewell until the next year's celebration. During dinner, village elders took turns sharing stories and reflections. When they gestured to Alex, Mai translated their words. They say that games are how Vietnamese people have always expressed what matters most: community, balance, skill, and joy. By playing their games with an open heart, you have honored their traditions more than any tourist who simply observes. Alex looked around the table at the faces that had become familiar in just 3 short days. Please tell them that I came to Vietnam feeling like a stranger, but I leave this village feeling like I've found something I didn't know I was missing. After Mai translated, Ba Lin raised her cup in a toast. Games build bridges between yesterday and tomorrow, between you and me, between Vietnam and America. You cross bridge with respect. Best way to travel. That night, as music and laughter continued in the village square, Alex sat quietly with his puppet, reflecting on everything he had experienced. The traditional games had taught him more than rules and skills. They had offered insights into a culture that valued connection, balance, awareness, and harmony. Tomorrow he would return to Hanoi, to his project and apartment, to air conditioning, an email. But he would carry something precious back with him. Not just memories, but a new lens through which to view both Vietnam and himself. 5th lesson of Vietnamese games. Ba Lin said, appearing beside him with uncanny timing, is most important. Joy shared traditional is games joy multiplied. And Quan. Alex nodded, Mandarin square understanding completely. An in a world increasingly divided by screens and a wooden and board distances. These ancient games offered a traditional profoundly needed contest, authentic human connection, and that he realized was worth traveling halfway around the world using to find. Tall bamboo structures. Chapter 8. Bit Mat Bat Day. Carrying home. Blindfolded goat catching. A game where blindfolded players catch others. Drive back to Hanoi was quieter than the journey to the village had been. Breaking a suspended clay pot. Alex watched the countryside roll by. Throwing vibrant green rice paddies, giving way gradually to suburbs, through elevated and targets, finally the bustling capital. My focused on navigating making the increasingly heavy traffic, Vietnamese kites, occasionally glancing at her unusually contemplative passenger. Dragon snake rising. You're quiet. A team movement game as they neared the city center. Alex replied, water puppetry. I feel like I've lived traditional Vietnamese 3 puppetry. Days. The performed on water that. Cultural terms. Compresses experiences. Our intensifies traditional them. Vietnamese Alex garment bond me, cradling the water Vietnamese puppet that now sat on his lap. I'm trying to figure out how to take this Vietnamese feeling back with me. Iced coffee, not just the condensed milk. But the connection, traditional Mai navigated around a noodle soup bar, carrying an improbable elderly woman. Term of respect. That's always the challenge. Communal after meaningful experiences. Village gathering place. How to integrate them into everyday festival. Life. When they reached Alex's apartment building, important agricultural or cultural events now seemed strangely sterile compared to Berlin's honoring family ancestors. Mai parked and turned Vietnamese. So, Lunar New Year what will you tell your colleagues about your first Vietnamese to balance, weekend? Maintain children's games to capture, swung to on giant swings, or seize Alex to coordinate, laughed, work together. They wouldn't believe me anyway. 2. He grew navigate, find one's way to synchronize for everything. Align not letting me hide in my apartment to connect and miss all meaningful relationships. My grandmother says you are welcome back anytime. Maintain or protect something valuable. You have good game spirit. Give a portion to others. High praise from her. Change significantly. I'd like that. To integrate. Alex said, realizing he meant it into a larger whole. After cultural concepts, exchanging contact community information, and connections between people. Alex in a carried his cultural heritage and puppet up traditions to his passed down through generations. Hit him like a wall, peaceful balance between different elements. The clean minimalist agricultural wisdom and blank walls knowledge related impersonal to farming after and the vibrant history-filled spaces of the village. Traditional the ways puppet on his coffee young table. People connect Alex romantically, intergenerational learning. Including the traditional clothing Berlin had insisted cultural preservation as he placed maintaining them carefully traditional in practices. His phone buzzed symbolic with accumulated notifications, deeper significance, emails behind simple messages, updates from a world that had continued with sense of belonging while to he had group, been immersed in another universe entirely. Connection between different contrast was jarring or perspectives. Evening. Preparing for his first day back at work, Alex found himself restless and unable to focus. His mind kept returning to the village, the games, the people, the laughter, the lessons. How could he carry those experiences into this environment? How could he prevent them from fading into just another travel anecdote? The answer came unexpectedly. The next morning, Alex arrived at the technology company where he'd been assigned, a sleek office in one of Hanoi's business districts. He was introduced to his Vietnamese colleagues, young professionals in modern business attire, all speaking excellent English. They were polite but reserved, maintaining professional distance from the foreign consultant. During the introductory meeting, the project manager mentioned team-building exercises planned for the following month to help the department work more cohesively, perhaps a cooking class or escape room. She suggested without enthusiasm. The usual options. Almost without thinking, Alex raised his hand. I might have an alternative suggestion, if you're open to it. All eyes turned to him. The American who had just arrived was already making proposals. I spent the weekend at a traditional festival in a village called Tan Hoa. Alex began, suddenly nervous but pressing on. They play games there that have existed for centuries. Games specifically designed to build community, trust, and teamwork. They might offer something more meaningful than commercial team-building activities. The room fell silent. Alex worried. He had overstepped, imposing his brief experience on people who had grown up in this culture. But then, to his surprise, one of the younger team members spoke up. My grandmother used to play those village games, she said. I never learned them properly. It might be interesting to reconnect with those traditions. Another colleague nodded. My family is from the city for generations. I know about these games only from school textbooks. The project manager studied Alex with new interest. Could you organize something like this? Perhaps with help. I'd need assistance, Alex admitted, but I know someone who could guide us. That evening, he called Mai, explaining the unexpected turn of events. She laughed delightedly at the idea. From reluctant participant to game ambassador in one weekend. Lin will be so proud. 2 weeks later, on a sunny Saturday morning, Alex stood in a park near Westlake, watching as his work colleagues arrived one by one. Mai had helped him organize a modified version of the village games, adapted for urban professionals, but retaining their essential spirit. To his surprise, nearly everyone from the office had chosen to attend, some bringing family members. They looked different outside the office, more relaxed in casual clothes, more open to new experiences. Welcome to Vietnamese Traditional Games Day, Alex announced when everyone had gathered. Today isn't about work or technology. It's about connection to each other and to traditions that have brought people together for centuries. Mai introduced herself as their cultural guide and began with a simple warm-up, a modified version of Rong Ran Lin Mai, Dragon Snake, Rising, where participants formed a human chain and followed a winding path through obstacles. Initial awkwardness quickly dissolved into laughter as the office director, normally serious and formal, led his dragon in increasingly complicated patterns. Colleagues who rarely spoke beyond work necessities found themselves calling encouragement to each other, forming spontaneous strategies. They progressed through simplified versions of the games Alex had learned, a tabletop An Quan tournament that revealed unexpected competitive spirits, a modified tug-of-war that had marketing and development departments good-naturedly straining against each other, blindfolded games that required trust and careful communication. By midday, the transformation was remarkable. People who had maintained professional facades were now cheering each other on, sharing snacks, and volunteering eagerly for each new activity. The human barriers that exist in workplaces everywhere, hierarchy, department divisions, personal, reserve, had temporarily dissolved. During a break, the project manager approached Alex. "I've worked with some of these people for 5 years," she said quietly, "and I've learned more about them today than in all that time combined." "That's the magic of these games," Alex replied. "They reveal character and build connections simultaneously." The day concluded with kite making and flying, a calm creative activity that had even the most serious engineers lying on grass, looking skyward with childlike wonder as their creations caught the afternoon breeze. As people began to depart, lingering longer than expected, exchanging contact information for social rather than work purposes, Alex felt a deep satisfaction. The games had worked their magic again, in a completely different context. Mai joined him as he packed up the remaining materials. "Well done, Game Master," she teased. "You've successfully imported village wisdom into corporate Vietnam." "I had an excellent teacher," Alex replied. Actually, several of them. My grandmother called this morning, Mai said. She wanted me to remind you of the 6th lesson of Vietnamese games. They are meant to be shared. Looking around at his colleagues, now more properly friends, walking away in small groups, still talking animatedly, Alex nodded. Mission accomplished then. In the months that followed, Alex's work assignment in Vietnam took an unexpected turn. What had begun as a routine technology implementation became a cross-cultural exchange program. The team-building games day had been so successful that other departments requested similar events. Alex and Mai found themselves collaborating regularly, creating workshops that combined traditional Vietnamese games with modern teamwork principles. The puppet from the water puppetry show still sat on Alex's coffee table, but it was no longer his only connection to Vietnamese traditions. His apartment gradually accumulated evidence of his deepening relationship with the country. A handcrafted O.N. Quan board gifted by colleagues, photos of kite flying expeditions with newfound friends, invitations to family celebrations. Most importantly, Alex had found a purpose beyond his technical assignment, becoming a bridge between traditional wisdom and contemporary needs, between cultures that had more to offer each other than either initially realized. 6 months later, when his work project concluded, Alex faced a decision. His company offered him a choice: return to America or extend his stay in Vietnam for a new regional role. The evening before he had to give his answer, Alex visited Mai and Ba Lin, who had come to Hanoi for the weekend. They sat in a cafe overlooking Hoan Kiem Lake, watching couples strolling and children playing in the early evening light. So, what will you choose? Mai asked directly. Alex watched a group of young people teaching foreign tourists how to play to hei, a traditional game involving colorful rice dough. Molded into animals, Alex smiled as he observed the cultural exchange happening naturally before them. Vietnamese youth proudly sharing their traditions with curious visitors. I think you already know my answer, he replied. There's still so much to learn here. So many games I haven't played yet. Ba Lin nodded approvingly. Good decision. Game's not finished with you yet. In the year that followed, Alex's life transformed in ways he could never have predicted. During those first reluctant days in Vietnam, his work expanded beyond technology implementation to include cultural exchange programs. Working with Mai, he helped develop workshops where traditional games became tools for teaching everything from leadership skills to conflict resolution. They traveled to villages throughout Vietnam, documenting games that were in danger of being forgotten, creating a digital archive that preserved not just rules, but context, stories, and the wisdom embedded within each activity. Weekend trips to Than Hoa became regular occurrences. Alex improved his Vietnamese, learned to make proper spring rolls under Ba Lin's exacting supervision, and gradually became an adopted member of Mai's extended family. His favorite moments were the impromptu game sessions that would break out during village gatherings. Oh, and Kwan, competitions that lasted hours. Kite flying expeditions that covered the sky with color. Storytelling contests where ancient tales mingled with contemporary anecdotes. One such evening, sitting on Barlin's porch, after a particularly joyful community dinner, Alex found himself reflecting on his journey. When I first came to Vietnam, I thought I'd be counting the days until I could leave, he admitted. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else. Mai, who had been sorting through photographs from their recent documentation project, looked up. The games worked their magic on you. It wasn't just the games, Alex said thoughtfully. It was what they represented. A way of seeing the world, where connection matters more than achievement, where process is as important as outcome. Barlin, listening quietly, nodded. Final lesson of Vietnamese games, she declared. They never really end. Like life, they continue through new players, new seasons, new understanding. As if to prove her point, the sound of children's laughter drifted from a nearby house, where a new generation was learning the patterns of Chi-Chi-Chan-Chan, the same patterns their grandparents had played, linking past and future in an unbroken chain of shared joy. Alex had arrived in Vietnam seeking professional accomplishment and had found something far more valuable, a way of living that felt authentic and connected. Through simple games, he had discovered profound truths about community, balance, awareness, sharing, and continuity. The games of Vietnam had taught him how to play at life with an open heart. Epilogue, 3 years later. And that, my friends, is how a reluctant American software engineer found his true calling through Vietnamese traditional games. Alex completed his presentation to enthusiastic applause from the international audience. The Cultural Heritage Conference in Singapore had invited him and Mai to present their work, now a comprehensive project documenting and revitalizing traditional games throughout Southeast Asia. Their initiative had grown beyond their wildest expectations, with educational programs in schools, corporate training modules, and even a popular mobile app that taught game rules and cultural contexts to new generations. As they fielded questions from the audience, a distinguished academic asked, "What would you say is the most important insight you've gained from 3 years studying these traditional pastimes?" Alex glanced at Mai before answering. That games are never just games. They're cultural repositories, storing wisdom, values, and connections that communities need to thrive. In a world increasingly divided by technology and individualism, these ancient forms of play offer something essential: genuine human connection. Later that evening, sharing dinner with conference participants from around the world, Alex received a message from Ba Lin, a photo of village children playing O An Kwan on the very same board where he had first learned 3 years earlier. Her caption read simply, "Game continues. Circle unbroken." Alex smiled. showing the message to Mai. She always did have a way of summing things up perfectly. Speaking of which, Mai replied, "Remember when you asked if you could take the feeling of connection back from the village? I'd say mission accomplished." Looking around at their dinner companions, new friends from a dozen countries, all sharing stories of how play builds bridges across cultures, Alex had to agree. The circle had indeed expanded. Unbroken and growing, the games of Vietnam had become his life's work, his passion, and ultimately his path home to the most important realization of all, that across time and cultures, what matters most is not what separates us, but the joy we create together. And that was a lesson worth traveling halfway around the world to learn. The end key vocabulary, repeated throughout,